Yes, we know that they have delivered on the promise not to run a family and friends government by practicing nepotism on an unparalleled scale, thereby becoming the most nepotistic government ever in the history of Ghana, and I dare say, in the history of the world.
The tag friends and family originated from the NDC. You recall that Honorable Alvin Babin, MP for Nadolio Kalio, revealed how Mohammed's government was not that of the NDC, but his friends and family.
So you can see the issue of nepotism. It's a concern for both the NDC and the MPP, who typically will be at each other's throat over who said this or who said that or who began this. It's usually the case that we get to hear all the parties raise issues and blame each other, you know, but never acknowledging anything. But with this morning, we're going to get on to Zoom right now and speak with Vitus Azim. Later on, we will get a private legal practitioner joining us in the studio to explore further some of the dimensions. So, Mr. Azim, thanks very much for joining us. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well.
Great. So I want to hear from you whether you get the sense that it is possible to have elected government officials take away their families and cronies from the governance chain, really.
I think when there's a determination, when you have people that see that it is wrong for them to do that, then it's a possibility. It can happen. You are elected president of the country. It is not your wife. It's not your children. It's not your family. You must first admit that and let them understand that it is not, running a country is not a private business. When you yourself believe in it and you let your family and friends understand that, then it is possible. But then when you yourself see that this is my opportunity, this is the right time for me to bring my family up, bring my children up, so that when I'm not there, they will be okay with themselves. Then, of course, it's not possible.
So Mr. Azim, I want to find out from you, really, if the person is qualified, should it be a problem? I mean, we have the president expressly saying in a video we'll play very shortly that if the family member is qualified, it shouldn't be a problem. So I'm asking you, if a member of the executive, the family member is qualified for any government business, should we worry?
We should be worried. Because one, what is the basis of this assertion that the fellow is qualified? Political appointments do not go through interviews. They do not go to written exams. So when you say the person is qualified, ask yourself, what was the person doing before you think that he's qualified for a certain position? Where was that person? How successful was that person in the role in which the person played before you decided to bring him into government?
Right, Mr. Azim, let's hold on. Let's hold on briefly, Mr.
What method?
Mr. Azim, let's hold on briefly so that we can hear the president's statement on this, which expressly will actually put it in context for the discussion. Right, so we'll get back to that later, but I have Bobby Banson, private legal practitioner, joining us in the studio. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Stephen, I'm good. Yeah.
So this discussion of nepotism, should we be having it in a legal context? For example, that if the president is elected as a president and he has a family member who has expertise in particular areas, who perhaps by themselves have qualified to be able to conduct that business, should we have any questions about this?
Of course, we should have questions, because you said a legal discussion, because the 1992 Constitution actually makes room that in situations where there's a likelihood of conflict of interest, people have a right to raise those issues. And so the reason why we are saying nepotism is that you realize that in that circle, there's a possibility of people putting family interest above public interest, personal interest.
So you're not going to say that those who are raising these concerns are necessarily against the government, like opposition elements of the NDC are making quite a lot of noise about this. But we shouldn't see them as enemies, should we?
No. I mean, any person who thinks that if somebody raises an issue of a likelihood of conflict of interest is making noise, that person has a problem, because it's something that is provided for in the 1992 Constitution. It's not only actual conflict of interest, but the likelihood or the optics, the look, the possibility of a conflict of interest. And like Mr. Axim said, it is not a subjective test. It is an objective test. Do third-party bystanders, looking at the circumstances of the case, think that this person has been put in this position solely because of his relationship with the person who has the power to make the appointment? Or is it that the person was picked up when every other person of the same standing was given equal opportunity? These are questions that people must ask.
And these usually don't happen. They don't give everyone the equal opportunity by the time. So let's quickly take the president making that statement, and that it will put our discussion into context. This is your election command center.
I am not presiding over a government of family and friends. Yes, there are one or two members of my family in the thing. Mr. Furiata, who's the Minister for Finance, is my cousin. He happened also at the time to have been the person responsible for the NPP fundraising drive. Nobody made any criticism of him when he was in that position. And I don't think it's so difficult for somebody who's been the fundraiser to transform it, to transition into what do you call it, a finance minister. And apart from everything else, as far as I'm concerned, he's amazingly capable. And he's not there because he's my cousin, because he's there because he is a very capable man.
That's very interesting. But let me come to you, Ms. Azim. The president, what he said, very short, but it's very instructive. He raises questions of why people didn't have any concerns when his cousin was actively raising funds for the party ahead of the elections, and they won, and he's playing a role which he's qualified for. So it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, his words, one or two members of my family.
It is a problem because, one, you cannot control him. If he does anything wrong, or he decides to do anything wrong, it's very difficult for you to restrain him, being your cousin and close relative. That's one. Yes, raising funds, that's okay. But there are certain key positions. And some of these things have come up already. I think the finance minister has been investigated for certain things already, although he was exonerated to some extent. But you just see that for you, it even makes your work very difficult. Can you imagine the daughter, the mother of your daughter that has been given a public position doing something wrong? How are you going to call that person to order? Your cousin who is always going around with you doing something wrong, how are you going to caution that person? So even if the fellow doesn't do anything wrong, the public, the electorate see it as a potential conflict of interest situation. But in this situation, they're going beyond that. They've done certain things that we're just keeping quiet about. You talk and they use the excuse, he or she is qualified for that position. And because of that alone, it's okay to have 10 qualified members of your family, to have 20 qualified members of your family in government. Because they're the only qualified people in this country. There are people you trust, and there are people that are very reliable.
But
that would have been good for a family business, but not for the running of a country.
But there are international best practices we look up to. I mean, as a country, we look up to countries like the United States of America, and it would take U.S., for example. President Donald Trump has his daughter, Ivanka Trump, as a senior White House official, and his son-in-law, who is Jared Kushner, is also a senior advisor. So we don't see anything wrong with that? And we see something wrong with ours?
You see, Trump is an outlier case. I'm sorry to say this. He's an outlier case that has decided to use the democracy to his personal advantage. And that is not something that we should look at as international best practice. I wouldn't see that as international best practice. But again, for them, there's a bit of transparency, there's a bit of accountability, or there's some transparency and accountability that people can use to hold him and his family members if they do something wrong. Unfortunately, in our system, it's not that easy to use to hold people, close relatives of the president, to account if they do something wrong, or if they're suspected to have done something wrong. We've seen cases where there have been investigations, and we haven't even seen the reports of those investigations, and no action has been taken. But in America, we've seen people, the president's close is that are being investigated and prosecuted. So there is a difference there. I wouldn't even call Trump's action as international best practice. I don't think so.
Ms. Azim, I'll come back to you for you to help us answer the question of how this encourages corruption in any way. But let me get to you, Bobby Bansing. We've already spoken about the legal dimensions and what's wrong and what's not right, what's wrong and what's right in the context of this. And the U.S. example that we gave, Mr. Vice Azim says that there are transparency systems in the U.S., blah, 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 but the U.S. case is not an international best practice. But you are a lawyer. How do we draw the line between what is right and what is wrong when it comes to conflict of interest situations like that?
I think, going back to the president's speech, I don't think that was a good example, because when Mr. Ofori-Atta was raising funds for the party, he was not in public office. Now he has come into public office. So we have every right to question what he's done and whether or not, it's been said, and that was subject matter of an investigation. He was owned, like he said himself, he was raising funds, he owns a bank. You've put him to head an institution that regulates banks in that sector. And so any neutral person sitting outside has the reason to suspect that there will be a possibility of conflict of interest. And like I said, the test is not whether or not there has actually been a conflict of interest. It is the likelihood, and that is what the Constitution says.
Or that it appears to be a conflict of interest.
There should be a conflict of interest. And so, and I agree completely with Mr. Azim that we cannot use what is happening now in America as the international best practice.
Because it's not.
It's not. Because I think there was a country in South America where the president and his wife were president and vice president respectively, and there were issues like that. So yes, it does not represent international best practices. I think the test, like I said, is whether or not other people on that same standing were given the opportunity, or should have been given the opportunity to do that. Nobody expects a president to come to office and then appoint his enemies into office. Yeah. Nobody expects that you will appoint people who are not aligned to your vision into office. That is why we would continue to respect somebody like President Kufuor. He appointed people who did not belong to his party into political office. And you would see that it's resulted in a lot of backlash from the beginning. But at the end of the day, these people brought a lot of things that he saw he could not have that quality, that expertise from.
So your view is that there should be a transparent system of meritocracy, so that when people who are appointed merit it, and then there's enough transparency. But let's quickly go back and hear the finance minister himself, who, although he spoke in Chi, I would try as much as possible to summarize what he said in Chi. Although he spoke in Chi, gave examples of governments in Ghana who have had family members actively in government business. Let's listen to him.
Government na ne mam yelu wom na ba ko cry Minister of Finance ba ko ye governor ba ko ye local government buzi am so bae Paweli aye nyina ye don ye ono so no government num na me Papa Jones ono so no finance na Kufuor government and so say buzi ye na Kufuor ye president wom na me yerimpo so and Kufuor government is so and the Onua president and Mr. Finance Minister. And to me who say Onyami Shrabi Biswa and yes nepotism bibi Onua Shishemra say Bebem.
Right, very interesting. Unfortunately, our masks don't show us smiling, but I'm smiling, absolutely. And he makes mention of Nkrumah's government and then Buzia's government and traces it to Kufuor's regime, and even mentions that even he himself, his own wife, Mia Meire, you know, and Nyamishrawa. If God blesses you, then so they see this as blessings, really. I mean, if you have a fine family, I mean, I don't have a fine family. My family are cocoa farmers and fishmongers and all of that, but we don't get the chance to form an executive. So if my brother, for example, was a finance minister, I don't have a chance to be an aide or something, that will be wrong?
You know, nobody is discounting the fact that if God blesses you, you would have some of these opportunities. But going on that tangent, like I keep saying, the question is whether or not you'll be...
So let's put it right. Let's put it in context. It's wrong to even give these explanations?
Well, I think it rather downplays the effect of what we are talking about. It trivializes it, because like I said, if you are put in a situation where your personal interest, and it need not be financial benefit, it need not be financial benefit. Like Mr. Axim said, how would you call your the mother of your daughter to order when she does something that is contrary to public interest? How will you call your cousin to order when he does something that is contrary to public interest? Especially when you have said that this is the person who raised the funds for you to run your campaign and become a president. And so you see that at every point in time, the interest of the public would be subjected to whatever personal interest that you may have. And to follow that trend, the same Bible says that you cannot serve God and mammon. You have to choose one. So you cannot have two masters. If you are made the minister for finance, and we are not picking on him as an example, I mean in particular, just as an example, your foremost interest should be, your allegiance should be first to the government, to the Constitution of Ghana, then to the Ghanaian people, as it were, before your party interest comes into play. So if you are put in a situation where from your previous dealings, people have every cause to suspect that your decisions will not have the public interest at heart first, then it's not a basis for noise. You don't call these questions as noise. Neither do you say because you have been blessed. I don't think that he's suggesting that people who do not come from those privileged lineages
are not blessed, or would never be
blessed. I don't think that is what he sought to say. But these are very vital questions that we need to ask, particularly in the context of the current transaction that is happening and how certain
So let me go to Ms. Azim, Vice Azim. Let's talk about corruption now, because this appears to be at the heart of all of these issues of transparency, conflict of interest. How do these situations encourage corruption in governments?
Let me just start by saying that this government should not always be referring to other governments that have done certain things in the past, because they promised Ghanaians change. That was the president's message to Ghanaians, change. And so we don't expect to go back 10 years ago and do the things that we're doing that were wrong. So that is not an explanation. Now, with regards to corruption, he was a fundraiser. And we've seen fundraisers or funders that have been sent to court over certain malpractices. Is it not likely that the opposition or other people will see whatever financial decisions he takes as also geared towards raising funds for the party campaign? Will it be wrong? Is it not a reasonable conclusion to decide that some of the things that he may be involved in doing are geared towards raising funds for the campaign? So these are the issues that we talk about. And when we say corruption, because you are in a certain position, you are controlling the state's finances, you are in a position to do certain things that will favor you, your family, or your political party, even your business. So these are the things that you are using your position or likely to use your position for your personal gain. And personal gain includes all those things that I've mentioned: yourself, your finance, your family, your business, and even your political party. That is the basic thing. The changes of the appointments that you preside over or advise the president on, you cannot say that you did not have your party in mind when you were making those changes or advising on those changes. The laws that you send to Parliament for approval, financial laws, taxes, and all those things. You cannot say that you were not influenced by your partisan interests, or even your personal interest, or interest of your family. So these are the issues that give us worry that you were there, you are there. You see, when you yourself say that when you are blessed, the thinking is already wrong. That you are blessed to be appointed to a certain position, so you must take advantage of it. Is that why you come to us asking us to vote for you, or because you have the international interest at heart?
But we still.
You asked me whether it is possible for us to overcome it.
Yes.
I said that if your thinking is already in that line, that you are blessed to occupy a certain position, definitely, how can you address tribalism or whatever, or nepotism?
Mr. Azim, I still wanted us to establish how all of this could link to corruption, because when Bobby Bansing was speaking, Bobby Bansing raised the issue of systems, laws, made references to the constitution. So I'm saying that if these family members are in the position of doing government business, and yet these businesses are done in transparent regulation of existing laws and accountability, and everything is clean, should we still have a problem?
We should not have a problem, but we're saying that it's not possible for you to ensure that, to ensure transparency, to ensure that things are done in a clear light, because you are occupying a certain enviable position to which most people will not have a chance to talk. Just look at what happened this week. You shut down the banks. There are already views about why some of these banks were closed. You say that you, the finance minister, did not have a hand in getting some of those banks' licenses revoked. Then people come to demonstrate, and you unleash the police to beat them because they want their money. People are on pension; they want their money. Why should the case take so long in court? Yet just started in July. Are you saying that you cannot influence the people that have taken decisions on these cases? And if you can influence, that is the corruption. You are using your position for personal partisan interest to benefit the family, to benefit the tribe, or whatever. Those are the issues that when tribalism and ethnicism itself, nepotism itself is corruption. So when you are saying that how do these influence corruption, it is already a corrupt act in itself.
I can understand that. So how do we deal with it? My final question to you before we wrap up. How do we deal with it? Because the president and the Ken Ofori-Atta have both made references to governments in Ghana in the past, tracing all the way from Nkrumah to Kufuor to Nana Akufo-Addo. It means that this is something that exists within our body politic. How do we deal with it once and for all, so that when people are elected into office, they don't initially start thinking about their family members who are qualified to fill positions?
Well, I think one of the things to do is what we're doing now. We must make it clear that it is wrong, it is not patriotic to do these things. If you have one or two family members, fine. But when they are up to 10, 20, 30, and everybody's talking about it, you should feel a bit worried that this is happening. So that's the first thing, the public education, sensitizing people, leaders, to understand that yes, what we are doing is wrong. After all, these people, some of them were occupying very enviable positions elsewhere. Some of them were in private business. Why must they come into politics? Do they need to survive by coming into politics or public positions if they were so qualified? So that is the public education. Then the laws. Unfortunately, the laws, it will be difficult to come out with laws that will say that you cannot bring your brother or sister into government. Because in the first place, who is even going to send that bill to Parliament? It is the people that are benefiting from the present system. And then when you go to Parliament, and you have 169 members of your party being in Parliament as against a smaller number, everything that they bring the executive branch, not only on this government, but other previous governments. Virtually every bill that is brought to Parliament, including nominations of people for certain key positions, that they're supposed to vet them very seriously, they go through.
Right, Mr.
So
Vice.
the law will be a problem.
Right, Mr. Azim, we're grateful for your time. Thank you extremely for speaking with us. Vitus Azim is an anti-corruption campaigner. He is a former executive director of the Ghana Integrity Initiative. Bobby Banson is still here with me. Mr. Banson, so all of these we need to find a solution for. I mean, Mr. Azim raises the key issue of the fact that the moment it happens, that in itself is corruption. So we've looked at the examples given by Kenneth Orata and the president himself. There is a worrying trend. They may not have been the first, but if this is happening in our society and there are no laws to stop that, what are we missing? How can we fix it?
I agree with the suggestion by Mr. Azim, except to add that, you cannot decouple this conflict of interest or nepotism from corruption. And from where I sit, I think the basis or one of the key sectors that we must look at is political party financing. Because the president said, this is my cousin who helped me raise funds for my campaign. So you should not complain if I have made him Minister for Finance. The Political Parties Act states that on the 6th month or within 6 months after every year, each political party is supposed to file to the Electoral Commission the source of their financing, who contributed, and how much. And
you are in court suing the Electoral Commission to produce audited accounts for MPP and NDC on behalf of your clients.
Yes, but that is for you caught me off guard there. But that is
so I mean, this is in relation.
Yes, exactly.
It's in relation to
it's in relation to that. So I am of the opinion that if some of these laws are not enforced, and in the Political Parties Act, there are consequences for parties that do not comply to these. That consequences must be enforced by the Electoral Commission. And so if the Electoral Commission is not doing this and allow them to remain on their books and come to Ghanaians and say, vote for me, and we vote for them, it means that that fundamental thing is missing. And I agree that CSOs, media, we must keep talking about these things, because if we don't, these people who come into office to take advantage of some of these, what they call lacuna or something in the law, will keep looking at us and giving us reasons that our family is blessed, our line is blessed, and so do not talk about it.
Even if my wife is...
other than that, you look at being jealous.
Yes.
And so I think that we must take it further and keep telling them. They may describe it as noise, and you didn't touch it, but let me just, if I have the time, I have a problem, for instance, with the way they have sought to defend some of the appointments in this Ejapa deal.
Yeah.
And I believe that it's one of the things that have come up why people are saying there's been nepotism.
Exactly.
The members of parliament, at least on the opposition side, are saying the key documents relating to the transaction have not been brought. The majority is saying we cannot bring it unless it is approved by third parties. But these are documents that will be binding on Ghana. And it is only parliament that can approve such international business transactions if they end up being that way. And you say, we won't show you the document, but we have approved the transaction when they've not seen the document. It's been said, and they've not denied it, that members or officers of this company, the special purpose vehicle, would have permanent positions so that they cannot be removed. I do not know which company where you would have directors and shareholders cannot remove directors. Now we see a situation where the son of the senior minister, who is currently the deputy chair, one of the deputy MDs of SNIT, I am told, has been made the head of this SPV.
And obviously cannot be removed.
And I heard them saying that, well, he was appointed by an international agency that went scouting. They should show us where the publication was made for people to bring in their CVs. People to show interest that they qualify. Was it open to Ghanaian? Was it published in the local media? Was it published in the international circles? Did he apply? Who sat at the panel to do the interview, the selection? It comes back to transparency. If all these things were transparent, they were known, and then the gentleman was picked, I don't think people would have basis to question it. But all we hear is that, oh, he's been appointed. You can't say anything because he is qualified.
Right.
That is what we are talking about.
Mr. Bobby Vansing, I'm afraid time is catching up on us. But quickly, I want you to give us a brief idea of what reliefs you're seeking on behalf of your clients, Dorcas Abra and Sika Amafo, who are suing the Electoral Commission to provide audited accounts of MPP and NDC. From 2012.
Well, I must say that ethically, we are not supposed to discuss our cases in court. I didn't know that this. I don't know where you got it from.
So anyway, you're not going to give me
except to say that, like you said, we are asking for them to, because it's a provision in the Political Parties Act that citizens can apply to the Electoral Commission to get copies. If they were not given, they have a right to go to court for the courts to order. There's no ulterior motive. It's just plain and simple. A Ghanaian citizen wants to be sure that the two leading political parties are complying with the provisions of the political parties.
Mr. Vanson, thanks very much. And sorry for catching you off guard that way. I'm Stephen Enti, and Bella Munde is still here with us. We'll take a short break. And when we return, we'll have the social media trends. De La Michelle will be here with that. Please stay with us. This is your Election Command Center.